All right. Well, welcome to the Laugh With podcast. This is our first episode. We're so excited that you're joining us from wherever you might be. And so we're going to dive in today with our first guest. We are so excited to be welcoming, and it's just funny to be welcoming him because he's going to be hosting these in the future. Our president and founder, Steve Shenbaum of Game On Nation. So we're excited to have this conversation here at the Laugh With podcast. So Steve, I'm so excited we're getting to sit down and chat today. And the first thing I really want to just go ahead and dive into is let's talk about the name Laugh With.
Yeah. Well,
why Laugh With?
And I have to give you some credit because you brought it back around, in the spirit of simplicity. We went through all these different names and finally you came back and said, why aren't we just going with Laugh With? Mm-hmm. It's one of our 3 rules of engagement. We talk about celebrating small wins. We talk about having each other's back, and we talk about Laugh With. And so I love this idea twofold. One, it's just in a simple marketing way, laugh with, and then the name of the guest, and it honors them. I think it's really deeper for all of us, and that is I just believe in the power of humor. And as a former character actor in Hollywood years ago, I experienced the challenges of being laughed at and the beauty and power of being laughed with. Yeah. So I've just always, I think all of the staff, including you, have always really been driven with this idea of how can we use humor in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And you and I were chopping it up even before we were filming. That I think that Laugh With even started before my acting career. I wasn't perfect as a kid. I was pretty high energy, and I didn't always make perfect decisions in terms of interacting with others during adolescence. But I think there was always a common theme for me in my mistakes was I always had a heart for the kid, the young person that was being made fun of. Mm-hmm. That was kind of heavy. You shared that a little bit too. You had that same, I think it was before.
Fiercely protective of people who got made fun of, because when you're in the position of being the one who's not usually made fun of for whatever reason, you feel that kind of sense of duty almost to take care of people who experience that laugh at instead of the laugh with.
And I think you and I share that. I think anyone in the kind of Game On ecosystem shares that protection. Mm-hmm. That's really where the heart of it really early on. I remember being in Mesa Elementary School outside of Los Angeles in West Covina. We had an opportunity to have a group of young boys and girls that had some intellectual challenges, and they were part of our social ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And I remember they just meshed with us. We went out and played recess together, and we kind of weren't really even tracking on some of their challenges that they were trying to overcome, and we just played together. Mm-hmm. And I remember about 6th grade, someone started to make fun of them, and I didn't get it. I was like, wait, why are you making fun of Donald? Yeah. And that's kind of where it started.
That's amazing. And kind of just a quick Laugh With moment. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Erin Watson. I am the director of programs and content here at Game On. So I'm excited to be hosting today. We'll probably be, coming back on the pod every now and then, but forgot to do that. So that's a little Laugh With moment.
Nice.
But I do want to ask you what was the Laugh With moment you had this week?
Nice. I thought of this a little bit. I have 2, but one is goes back to my daughters. Shocking. I get a lot of humor from being a parent.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? A parent of 3 here and a parent of 2 over here. Bailey is getting into playing blackjack, Erin. Yeah. Now, we don't put that on social media, even though I just announced.
I love this for you all.
Jackie's not thrilled by this, but Bailey's really getting into blackjack. So that's instead of doing story time at night, I can't believe I'm sharing this.
I love it.
Bailey will go, Dad, little blackjack. And we'll play 7 hands to the point where she's splitting 8s and doubling down and has all the signals. So I'm just sharing. It's kind of a really funny moment. I shouldn't encourage this. We're not betting.
She has a select set of skills.
Yes.
And I respect it very deeply.
Thank you, Erin. I knew by sharing that you would enjoy it. So Bailey, my Laugh With is not really a joke. It's just Bailey and I are having this funny rhythm where we play a little blackjack. There's no wagering. And we have 8 or 9 hands. Make sure she wins on the last hand without cheating. And she understands the whole blackjack, flip the cards over, and how to split 8s, and how to hold on the 17. And it's good for math.
So what's the over-under on Bailey starting to wager chores in the coming weeks? Because I feel like that's coming.
I can either confirm or deny I've created a bad situation. So anyway, that was kind of that was a special Laugh With moment that we've been having, and it's it's fun.
That's great.
How about you?
Yes. So again, we get a lot of humor from our kids. They're unique characters. So all 3 of my boys are currently playing baseball. Mm-hmm. to include our 3.5-year-old who is in T-ball, and my husband, Dan, who's a police officer, is currently coaching their team and kind of runs it like a cop running a T-ball team, which whatever came to mind in that is exactly what's happening. But it's really humbling, and you just have to laugh with the other parents when your kid is I don't want to call him the bad kid, but he's the rambunctious kid on
spirited.
the team. Spirited.
Yeah.
So the spirited kid spent about 5 minutes last night just standing on home plate because my husband couldn't deal with him any longer and sent him over there.
No.
So it's just one of those funny moments where I'm looking at the other parents and I'm like, I've raised a raccoon and I don't know what to do about it. And you just have to laugh with the other parents because we've all been there. We've all had our kid be the one who went rogue on the team where you think they're going to be the shining example and they're not. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And we'll do better next time.
I love it. So, I think the laugh with also have a theme of like humility.
Always.
And real.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of, I'm aging myself, but kind of in that Seinfeld rhythm. There's that beauty in like simple human behavior. And we're pretty funny characters.
We are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So please don't promote that Aaron's youngest is figuring out where the bases are. And please don't promote that Bailey is becoming a card shark.
Again,
even though we just said it on the first
very
podcast.
excited for the future of this. We're going to have to do check-ins on Bailey.
Yeah.
Bailey's
So she's in Vegas. She's counting cards.
She's winning this year. She's got the sunglasses. She got the shades rocking.
Why do you call your daughter retirement plan? No, that's silly. But anyway.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to jump in and talk about today is Game On takes a really innovative approach to learning and development, both professional application, but also in our personal lives. So we teach connection, teamwork, and communication through improv-based exercises. But I want to track all the way back to how did this company start? And to do that, I want to kind of take an innovative approach.
Nice.
I've got a series of photos back here that I know are really instrumental individuals in the Game On origin story. So as I show you some of those pictures, would love to hear the story and connection, because we are all about connection.
I love this.
To the Game On story.
Thank you, Aaron. And as you pull those pictures out, and Aaron kind of gave me a heads up, I love that you gave me a framework, because for everyone out there who's like, what's your origin story? It can be a really vague, overwhelming question. So thank you for like the prompts, and I like props.
Well, I got excited when I saw these pictures and was like, oh, perfect.
Okay.
I love it when I get the answers to the
picture
test.
number
so
one.
We'll start with picture number one.
Oh, I'm going to get emotional. So that's Kimberly Williams Paisley.
Okay.
And I'm just going to acknowledge I'll be dropping names throughout this process, and I'll pick them all up later.
We love that.
Matt Damon said, stop dropping names, Steve.
But what did Ben Affleck say?
Oh, I love it. We got two. We'll pick them all up later. Let them all get on that floor. So that at the time, that was Kimberly Williams, and she's now married to Brad Paisley. Kimberly Williams Paisley. Kim and I went to college together. She's one of my dearest friends, and she was a huge part of the Game On beginnings. She came to me and said, I really want to work on my interview skills. She was already a celebrity, having been cast as Father of the Bride while we were in college at Northwestern.
Just such a core memory for me growing up watching that movie.
Yeah.
My cousin and I love Father of the Bride.
So we were part of that process, and not the process, she earned it, but we were in that. We were doing life together at that time, and then we were out in LA, living in Santa Monica, and Kim was really encouraging me to help folks on their interviews. And so Kim, I would say, was one of my first unofficial clients. And beyond that, she introduced me to some other really, really interesting people. And the whole point was Kim was so talented, but she was under the media spotlight at a very young age. And there was really no sort of major training. And it was at a time, it was 1997, so there's pre-social media.
Right.
So this whole thing has advanced. We may talk about that later. But anyway, Kim is still a dear friend. I have to give her so much credit for being a huge part of the origin story. And that picture is her practicing basketball for the scene in Father of the Bride, where she plays basketball with Steve Martin, her father, in that kind of iconic moment where he's handing her off to marriage. So anyway,
it's the tearjerker scene of the movie.
Yeah, it's pretty special. And no offense, laugh with, Kimmy's not the greatest basketball player.
You mean she's not going to get picked up by the WNBA?
I don't think so. And I don't think she'd take offense to me saying that. She's a lefty, so I always know which way she's going all the time. But yeah, that was that picture, and that's important to me. All right. So
picture number 2.
Oh, wow. Well, there's a connection here, but that's Pete Sampras. And that's Pete Sampras when he was probably 12 years old. And, Pete and Kim were dear friends years ago. Mm-hmm. And Kim introduced me to Pete. And I'll first say a quote that Pete shared with me. he said, after we worked together, he said, Steve, he called me Shemmy. That was my nickname. But Shemmy, I wish this program was offered when I was younger. And I never will forget that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, where are the young Pete Samprases? Well, that kind of got us to IMG Sports Academy. But before we go there, yeah, Pete was the #1 tennis player in the world, really special person, but was not what you'd call wildly outgoing. He would even consider himself a bit introverted. Well, how do you expect a #1 tennis player in the world for 6 straight years? He was the #1 tennis player for 6 straight years. And then we expect this incredible athlete who has to do this repetitive game also be outgoing and charming and beautiful in storytelling. Well, that's a lot to ask, you know?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're a great storyteller. I feel confident. I can say I wasn't the #1 athlete in anything. So to have both in play is a lot to ask.
That's a really unique individual who's programmed to be, top of their game, elite athlete, and the best presenter and storyteller interviewer you've ever met. That's a unique set of skills, to quote Liam Neeson.
And I would say that it's So basically, Pete said, I'm tired of being called boring.
Yeah.
And I was like, it broke my heart. And he's a good guy. And he wasn't doing anything controversial. I think that's was part of what made him, quote unquote, I air quote it, boring. Well, my goodness, he's respecting his opponents. He's winning matches. He's shaking people's hands. And he leaves, and he's a quiet person. He's a private person. So anyway, Pete came to me and said, I'd like to work on maybe bringing my personality out a little more. And so that's a very important person as well. A similar season when Kim was encouraging me, Pete was out there in Santa Monica, and I would say he was my first elite sports athlete to kind of embrace this unique improv-based curriculum.
And I think there's just an interesting narrative there too. So, I mean, you've worked with a lot of professional athletes, and so there's this incredible pressure for them to perform on the court or on the field or wherever they might be playing. But I don't think people often consider the pressure that happens when they walk off of that forum in front of a camera. So, I mean, how did you find working with him helped curate what that process looks like for you?
You're good at this, Aaron Watson. You may be leaning into being the host of this thing.
Hey, whatever.
Maybe you're the retirement plan. While Bailey's playing blackjack in Vegas.
She's my retirement plan too.
Fair. Back to your question, it goes back to a statement Pete made. Beyond the I wish this was offered when I was younger, which always stuck with me, he also told me a little bit about how he would get a little bit nervous on the tennis court. And I would say, totally understand, serving second serve for match point. He's like, no, that's not what made me nervous. When I started winning the match, I was starting to get nervous about the interview that I was going to have after the match.
That's wild that your brain's fragmenting that way.
If we could just use that as an ROI, the greatest tennis player in the world at the time is worried not about what normal people worry about, right? You've watched a match where you're like, how are they calm during the second serve? And I'm not a huge tennis guru, but I know enough. Second serve, and it's break point, and if they hit it into the net, it switches gears, and all of a sudden they lose the set. And he's like, no, that's not what bothered me. What bothered me was thinking, oh no, I'm going to win, and now I have to deal with the media onslaught. And I thought, I can help you, not with your serve, but I can help you with that other side, which is about bringing giftings together. So, to kind of your question, it really created this sort of easy opportunity to solve a concern that Pete had, which was really actually shocking to me because I never thought about that. And I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Giving people peace in the thing that makes them uncomfortable so they can do what they're really good at with that focus that needs to happen.
You nailed it. And before we get into even a third one, this idea of also improv can be really uncomfortable. Not for us.
Sure.
You have a background in drama. You have a background in curriculum design. I have a background in being an actor. So for me, it's no problem. But for others, it's their biggest concern.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that was always, I'll never forget that with Pete.
And that's something I think is important to mention as we talk about Game On. You have that moment where you say, we're going to, more or less say, we're going to do some improv today.
Yeah.
You usually get half the room that's like,
yep,
don't look at me.
Yep.
And I think sometimes I try really hard not to forget this, that public speaking is someone else's biggest fear in the entire world.
Yes.
And so I think people know that generally speaking, that's
right.
a fear. But part of our role is to come in and establish that safety and trust. And I do think that's what Laugh With does too.
I agree.
Is build that trust.
And I think it's a unifier. I don't think anyone no matter you're a elite athlete like Pete, or you're a celebrity early like Kim, or for the other few that we're going to talk about, I don't think anyone, including you and I, who are not elite athletes, no one says, I can't wait to be made fun of.
Yeah.
It's a unifier. Like those three rules, laugh with, not at, have each other's back, celebrate small wins. All three of those are really intentional, because it's hard to like argue against them.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't think anyone in their right mind is going to be like, I'd like to be shamed. I hope it's done early in the day, so I could really bask in that.
Then while I'm driving home, I can think about what I could have done differently. I feel that to my core.
Yeah, to my core.
Right. So our third picture.
Now this one's probably the least known, but it's really dear, and his name is Eddie Mehrens.
Okay.
I haven't talked to Eddie in 20 years. This is from years ago, but Eddie, at the time of this sort of Pete Kim season, Eddie was the golf pro at Bel Air. And he, actually, Pete played golf there as a member. And Eddie's son, if I recollect, I haven't talked about this a lot, was the one who introduced me to Eddie. And he was a sweet, probably 80 at the time. So this was 25 years ago. And Eddie Mehrens was the they called him the little pro. And he was this sweet, humble man who was the golf pro at one of the most prestigious golf courses. And he was very quiet. And he was very shy, but he also... his family, and he wanted to like make sure that he created his legacy, and like he had so much story to share. So I haven't talked about this a lot. Eddie is this sort of unknown but known in his industry, sort of quiet, brilliant master of golf and teaching, and it was really fun to work with him. For me, it was also special not just to work with someone who's quiet in the golf space, but also because he was my elder. It was, you've got Kim, she's young, she's my age, and Pete is our age, but then Eddie at the time was like in his 80s. And I learned just as much working with Eddie as Eddie learned from me, and from a personality perspective, beyond the age, because I was probably like 28 at the time, and Eddie was like 80, 85, but also there was a beautiful difference in our personalities, and I think we both appreciated my outgoingness and his ability to be present and calm and observe.
So I want to trace back to something you said earlier, but connect it to this moment too. You had mentioned earlier that, you had this group of kids who would come play with you all, and everyone just played together. There were no questions asked. You played the game. And in this relationship where there might be this age gap or dynamic that's happening, and you have differences of personality, what role does play have in those spaces? And when we talk about improv and play. Yeah,
I think it's a unifier. It's a universal connection. So the answer is like, what role does play have? A massive role, because as you know, we kind of start our premise with, this idea of like, we all played hide and seek or some version of that, whether you're Eddie, Kim, Pete, or anyone that's embracing the game on curriculum. The role of play is so crucial, but the role of play has to be done in a way that's purposeful and authentic.
Absolutely.
Or else you have an Eddie Mehrens, who's a Bel Air country club pro, and he's like, I don't really want to play pin the tail on the donkey per se. Nothing against that game, but the role of play is huge. And also think about all these folks we're talking about. There's an understanding of exercise and movement and competition and levels. I mean, they're all wired that way. All high performers are. So I think play really speaks to high-performing people, whether you're a celebrity or you're an actor, you're a dancer, you're a musician, you're a business person, or you're an athlete. So,
stretch for
last
fourth
one.
Picture.
Yes. Actually, I didn't realize we have two people with a basketball in their hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one is Kimmy with her left, and the other is Carmelo Anthony.
So tell us about
Melo. So this goes back to Bill Duffy and Bill Sanders were agents in L.A., and Bill Sanders worked with Bill Duffy. Bill is one of the most, Duffy is one of the most renowned agents in basketball ever. He's a legend, and Bill Sanders worked as in marketing for Duffy, and Bill Sanders came to me and said, I have a young man who is finishing his freshman year at Syracuse, and we would love to help him with his story, help him feel confident speaking. And I was following college basketball, so I thought Syracuse, and they had just won the national championship. And I thought, is there a chance that it might be that freshman? That freshman who led them to that national championship. It was Carmelo Anthony. And again, this all happened at a very similar time. And things that really stand out to me about Carmelo was we come from different backgrounds. You know, Carmelo grew up in Baltimore, kind of where The Wire is based in terms of that show. And I grew up in West Covina. And we bring different culture, different life experiences, different ages. And so my big thing with Carmelo was I didn't want to come up to him and say, like, man, I feel you. I know what you're going through. I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't. And that really helped me understand the power of a laugh with, not at. Not from like laugh with, not at, let's Kim and I connect. We went to college together. We were besties. Pete and I have a similar age. And we had similar life experiences. He grew up in Palisades. I grew up in West Covina, Southern Cal. But with Mello, it really stretched me to really meet him where he was and honor him. Yeah. So Laugh With really took on getting emotional because he didn't just show up alone. Yeah. He showed up for our first session in Santa Monica with 4 of his friends. And you look back and you go, he wanted to feel safe.
Absolutely.
He didn't know this guy, this high energy 28-year-old guy who's a media thing, and Duffy and Sanders said you should meet with him. And if I'm Mello, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. But one thing that stood out to that in that interaction when he brought his crew, it was really beautiful because I was like, let's all do this together, play. Yeah. So he brought 4 of his friends, and some people could be like, this is a one-on-one session. What are you doing? No, come on in. Come on in, everyone. Absolutely. Let's do that. That was his crew. He was going to run with these friends because he had trust in them and they had done life together. I didn't. I was just some guy coming in to be hired to help. So I had to earn their trust, not force it, not try to challenge it, just earn it. But, one of the things that Mello got me to really think about was how humor can be a unifier. Absolutely. The guy loves to laugh, and he's really funny. And he wouldn't call me Shemmy. Duffy and Sanders called me Shemmy. That was my nickname at college and out of college. But he would call me Shenbaum. Shenbaum. And he'd mess it up all the time, like purposely. He'd be like, Shenbaum. But yeah, so Mello was another just special person to connect with, and his friends. And it was neat to see, like, are they going to respond to the curriculum?
Sure. And so we've talked a lot about how the Game On curriculum influenced, we have Kimberly Williams-Paisley, who's in the acting space.
Yep. Good call.
And then you've got athletes. So how does this translate to professional skills?
It's a great question, Erin. I think it goes back to a term I used earlier, which I think it resonates with anyone, but I really love to share this curriculum with people that are like just in the high performing space. So if you think about folks that are in the business world, entrepreneurs, teachers, educators, military personnel, folks that are navigating high-performing environments. I believe that this curriculum speaks to them because it really speaks to everyone, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but because it is engaging, and this curriculum allows us to then open up and develop trust so we can then come to some practical takeaways.
Absolutely.
That's, I think, the big one. A lot of times you've helped with this. It's not about the game. The exercise, the improv, the laugh with is a way to build trust. So then we can get to, for all 4 of those folks, the job is not, let's just laugh together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go to an improv show, go to a whatever you enjoy in terms of entertainment. The idea was to build trust. And then we could say, okay, let's come up with some practical, tangible solutions, techniques that we can use on the daily when you're in your 5th set of a tennis match, when you're on the set of Father of the Bride and you're doing your sixth take, when you're Eddie Merrins, who's really introverted, yet his job is to interact with these Bel Air country club members. Yeah. Whether you're Carmelo, I just wanted to add one more thing, whether you're Carmelo and you're a freshman out of Syracuse, and you're going to be, he ended up, I think, being the 3rd pick in the draft. It was LeBron James. Second person, I kind of forgot. Someone will figure it out and tell us after they watch this podcast. And then it was LeBron. And then it was Carmelo. It was LeBron, someone, and then Mello. But back to Mello, I had forgotten to say this. I remember asking him, and this goes back to high performers as well, this idea of when you are doing something really well and you're focusing on it, it can become your identity.
Absolutely.
For us even, Erin, it could be like, Erin is the mom of, Steve is the father of. We could be like, oh, you're the game on. Well, that's nice, but there's more to us.
Absolutely.
There's more to us than just being the mother of, the husband of, the wife of, or even what we do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget, along with Sampras saying, I wish this program was offered when I was younger. Where are there younger Pete Sampras's, IMG Academy?
Sure.
But Mello said to me, I asked him, when you were at Syracuse for the year, did you ever have any conversations on campus? Think about it. He's walking around campus that did not have something to do with basketball. Mm. So just think about this too as an athlete. Mm. He's like 6'8". So no one's walking up to him saying, hey, you play second base? No. And if they do, they're being snarky.
Sure.
And it's a huge program. And it's Carmelo Anthony, who was already known as a phenom in high school. So I asked him, did you ever have a conversation in college in the year you were there that didn't involve basketball? He said never. Not one exchange. But that tells you, too, when we have folks that are known so well for what they do, and we expect them to be these effusive, dynamic, charismatic storytellers, we're asking so much.
Absolutely.
You went to FSU. I went to Northwestern. We had normal conversations all the time.
Yeah.
And we were building that social muscle. Mm-hmm. And I just will never forget that. And I think that happens a lot with all of our elite folk, whether it's commanders in the military or people that are in management positions or even your local teachers. It's like, oh, that's Mrs. or that's Mr.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Well, and I think, we can get so wrapped up in the identity of what we do that offering opportunities to connect in a lighthearted way are really important because, we've gotten feedback after a session where someone said something to the tone of, I don't know exactly what professional skills I got, but I laughed and engaged with my team for the first time ever. So I guess I got something out of it. And I'm like, no, you got a lot out of it.
It's great.
Because you're no longer the spreadsheet guy.
Yeah.
You're Jim and you have 3 parakeets.
It's so good.
And you love to fish.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you humanized somebody.
And everyone in the audience will say, I didn't know that about that person. And you'll be like, because you teach it. And you'll be like, how long have you worked with, let's say, Jim? And they're like, 12 years. You're like, you've worked together for 12 years.
Yeah.
Back to 1 year at Syracuse, Carmelo was never asked anything that didn't involve basketball. Never had an exchange. Well, you can then flip that to, let's just use the the universal Jim.
Yeah.
Jim is the greatest accountant at firm X.
Yeah.
And you could argue that no one's talking to him about anything other than how are the numbers?
Yeah.
How's the quarterly report?
And we wonder why it's so challenging for people to transition from work to retirement or one job to another or things like that because our identities have become so much of that. And so that's where, at Game On, connection is at the center point of everything we do because we believe that human connection influences how we do work. Yeah. We can do work better when we see people aren't just, a cog in the wheel and the machinery of how we do things. So, and I think the idea of gamification and play, Chris Friday in our office, who is the director of curriculum, and I'll go ahead and tease it, he's going to be on. He really figures out where these games piece in to pull out the best in people. But he always starts off by saying, games don't lie.
It's so good.
Right? So with this notion of improv in professional spaces, because we work in corporate, military, athletics, schools, which is a really, a heart project for us in our local community. So why improv? Why improv? Why does it work?
Yeah, I think it makes it an opportunity for people to realize that improvisation is not exclusive to people that have a background in theater. Improvisation is available to everyone. Mm-hmm. And so you say, why improv? Well, our team and expert facilitators throughout the country are skilled in improvisation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just get so excited to introduce improvisation not as a performance technique, but as a learning technique.
It is. And it's a life technique in so many ways because, I think everyone's an improviser, whether they know it or not. I have to improvise every day. I've never raised humans before. I've never raised a 10-year-old.
So you didn't take a class at Florida State called Mother of 3 under 10 years old?
That'd be great curriculum because I can tell you how to do a lot of really useless things based on my academics, but those practical skills. But we improvise every day and teaching yourself to, number one, trust yourself in your decisions. Yeah. That I'm not going to mess it up too badly. And 9 times out of 10, there's a team, much like you shared that, Carmelo showed up with 4 friends.
Yeah.
Part of that safety and security is he knew he had someone cheering him on, who was celebrating his wins, who had his back,
Yeah.
and were there to laugh with him and not at him.
Yeah.
Maybe a little laugh at, because the trust already existed.
You make a really good point. You read my mind, which is, let's not see this as like 100% and zero, but we always say, you got to earn the right.
Absolutely.
Let's not be so legalistic that like we never poke fun at one another. But I can tell you that if I poked fun at, especially Carmelo, because Pete and Kim I knew the best, and then Pete I got to know in a relationship. But I'd say Carmelo was the one that I knew the least. And imagine if I would have laughed at him early. It's over.
Yeah.
That trust is
Never
over.
walk back in the door.
And then the guard goes up, and then you're called shy, or he's called shy. He's not shy. He's just like, I don't trust that guy. And his team drives away going, never again for whatever that guy's nickname, Shenbaum, whatever he was, whatever he is. We're done. that guy. But back to your point, which I love, is I think we're all improvers, and that's why improv works. As long as you define it early, that we're not using this, and there's nothing wrong with improv as a performance. I mean, we have dear friends.
Course.
Yeah, we have dear friends that teach the game on curriculum, and then when they're not, they're also doing really cool shows. But you're going to that show with the agreement that you're there as an audience member to be entertained. That's just not the way we're using it.
Absolutely.
And I think that improv is wildly inclusive in that people need to put themselves in that picture. And if you don't have a background in theater, sometimes you don't have a background, it'd be by getting a chance to be in front of people. You sometimes can just assume improv is for the actor kids. Sure. It's for the folks that tracking theater and these terms, extroverted and public speakers. When I mean, I've found, back to Eddie Merrins, he was one of the most wonderful improvisationalists, but he was very quiet, but he was very tactical. And once they realize, wow, I can do this, it's a gateway to connect.
And that's a cool moment you see in sessions sometimes because, excuse me, Game On, we don't typically take volunteers. We take voluntold.
I know, it's weird.
And but there's such beauty that comes from it, because sometimes you get the person who gets up, does the exercise in a space where we've created trust and support, and they walk away going, I didn't even know I could do that, and you made me look like a rock star in front of my team. Yeah. So now I feel comfortable continuing to do that. So I think that's the beauty of it.
And back to the title, we didn't plan this. That doesn't happen unless you set the rules up early and establish laugh with, not at. Absolutely. And by the way, we'll still have team members who default to laugh at. It's human. Yeah. We don't shame them. We just stop for a moment and say, hold on. Did we just get a joke at that person's expense? And you might know them really well, but in this setting, we're going to act as if we are earning trust. And so you establish that laugh with, not at early. And then the other 2 rules, which is have each other's back, celebrate small wins. And you'll find that most improv scenes, the people not only survive, they thrive because they're following those rules. So absolutely. I also am just intrigued by this laugh with, because we're learning like what makes these 4 that we were talking about in terms of the Game On origin story, but just what do people find funny? Yeah. And how do they define laugh, and what brings them joy? I think that's the other thing that I really love, is this idea of encouraging people to not think of laughter as the funniest person in the room.
Absolutely.
That's huge, because you could argue, besides Kimmy, who's an actress, she's got some rhythm when it comes to being that, but Carmelo and Eddie and Pete, none of them were introduced to like being a stand-up comic. Sure. So it's just neat to think about our 2 laugh withs. We talked about my daughter playing blackjack, and you talked about, your son learning the game and being put in timeout by his dad coach at home. None of those stories are like set up punchline jokes.
No, it's all just relatable humor. I love humor because it's such a spectrum. And the way I always teach the laugh with rule is that laugh with is the experience of mutual joy. Yeah. And my example is anytime you're showing someone your favorite funny movie for the first time, and the scene happens, they've never seen the movie before, the funny scene happens, where are you usually looking? you're looking at the other person.
Yeah.
You want to make sure they find it funny
That's
too.
great.
Because if I'm showing someone Monty Python and the Holy Grail for the first time and they're not laughing when the guy's clacking coconuts coming over the hill.
That's hilarious.
It's a long hour and a half.
Oh, I remember. You just did that
So
to
I
me.
need-
We did not plan this. He's like clacking as if he's a horse.
And
Click,
the guy's
click,
galloping.
click, click, click.
Yeah. And so if someone's not finding the humor in that, I might need to adjust course on what we're going to experience mutually as joy.
Yeah.
So there's that opportunity where they can learn my humor, or we just need to pivot and watch something else.
And if we think about Laugh With solely as the funniest person in the room, the setup punchline joke, Googling funny jokes, which I don't encourage most people to do because that's a rabbit trail. Again, if you think of laughter that way, that isolated, then most people won't put themselves in that picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll be asked, are you funny? Like, no, not really. I don't really have a great sense of humor. And I find if you combine kindness and you combine confidence and somewhat some intellect. I'm not talking about you have to be the smartest person in the room. Kindness, confidence, and intellect. You have a recipe, especially if you have trust, with some really good laughter.
Yeah.
So that's just been interesting to me, how people define laughter, what brings them joy, whether it's Carmelo talking about listening to music with his crew, or Eddie Marin's observing people on the golf course, or Pete Sampras. He used to get a laugh out of noticing his opponent's injuries without them realizing he knows them. That's fascinating. And he'd get joy out of, like, that person is favoring their left ankle and I'm going to continue to play that bass line. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You know? So
it is. And so as we're kind of wrapping up this idea of the origin story, one of the key foundations of Game On, I don't think any facilitator teaches Game On without teaching those rules of the game first. And we've said them several times. So we laugh with, not at, we have each other's back, and we celebrate small wins. Where did those come from, and why do you think they underpin everything that we do?
It's a really good question. I didn't plan it out. I'm
asking you some questions on the fly.
That's
We're improvising.
Good. I was just about to say, whoa, wait, do as I say, not as I do. I didn't know the tables were going to be turned.
Got you.
If I look away, you won't see me. That's what we say to volunteers. I think it's like one of those where, like, over years and years and years of honing it. So you look at them now and they're pretty simple. I think they were whittled down over years. I think part of it was Act One in Los Angeles, as I was teaching the four that you brought up and others. And then we moved to IMG Academy and had like a 10-year run there with Blair there and Chris there. And that was Act Two. And I think it was during that Act Two period that we kind of just start to see, why is this working?
Sure.
And I think by the time we got in Act Three, when we moved off campus from IMG Academy, stayed in Bradenton, I just started to think about, what are the things that are really driving this curriculum? And I think it was about 10 years ago, and kind of I've honed in on those three. And I really was thinking about what's universal that every audience member, corporate, military, sports, education, would respond to. Yeah. But I think the answer really is, it wasn't just one moment where I had that like epiphany. I think that's important for anyone listening or watching, because it comes over years and years, and you finally go, what's working? And I asked audiences all the time, what's working for you? You know? So that's how those three kind of ended up being our, like, rules of the game.
Yeah, and I like the acknowledgement of the progression of it. Yeah. I think so many of us think we're supposed to put out the first draft, and that's the best answer.
Goodness gracious.
And to lean into something that someone very wise shared with us, and I'm not talking about our cameraman who's behind the scenes, but, you know, if you're always chasing perfection, you're never going to do the thing. And sometimes we just have to do it. Yeah. And I think, you know, this podcast is a result of some of that conversation and us diving in and doing the thing. And, you know, acknowledging that these things take time to hone down to three very clean, simple rules that someone was probably like, oh, he came up with those easily. No. They took time. Totally. And effort to curate what that sound looks like.
That's really good, Erin.
So as we kind of bring our time home, we always talk about key takeaways from sessions. And that's really the important thing, is it's not the game you played, it's not the exercise that we did, but it's about the conversations we had in the room and the conversation we just had. So if you had to think about like a key takeaway that you want people to think about walking away from our time together, what would that takeaway be? What do you want people thinking about?
And we didn't really rehearse this, and it just hit me. And I would ask everyone, including us, like, remind themselves, what brings you joy? You know, what brings you joy? We have the laugh with, not out, have each other's backs, celebrate small wins. We talked about those. And by the way, people can run with those. but I would really encourage people to, in every interaction, remind themselves what brings them joy, what makes them smile, what makes them laugh. And if you look for it, I promise you'll find it.
Yeah.
You will.
Absolutely.
Just like if you look for the problem, which they're out there, my goodness, we're all problematic. We're messy people, but if you look for what brings you joy, you'll start to notice things like, oh, wow, that's really funny. I'm really funny. My daughter's really funny. My son's really funny. That situation's really funny. And as long as you focus on what brings you joy and how to laugh with, you'll start to see some really cool things like at the airport and in your day-to-day and at the supermarket. And I think it's fun to look for that because we need that more than ever right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And so as we move through this podcast, I just kind of want to lay the landscape of what we're hoping to do with this space. And really, we are going to be laughing with someone different, not on every episode. It might just be a different character each week, if not each week, but every different character.
Yeah.
But do you want to kind of quickly share what the vision is in terms of like who some of these people are and what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited, and Aaron, you've really set up a neat framework for this. The idea would be like, if you're my guest, it'd be Laugh with Aaron Watson, and these folks will come from a variety of spaces. I think one of the common unifiers they'll have is folks that are high performers, and how you define that. I mean, my goodness, maybe at some point, maybe I'll have my daughter Blake on. She's a high performer in that she goes and does solo singing, and a lot of people would find that to be really out of their comfort zone.
Sure.
But yeah, I think folks that are in the spaces that we enjoy teaching in, which is, the education space, the military space, the sports, college and pro sports space, and the corporate space, is bringing folks in that follow our rules of the game naturally, what brings them joy. And I'm really excited to make it less about being funny, right? And more about what do they find humorous, where do they find themselves laughing, and back to what brings you joy. So I think the folks that we'll have on, we'll start with some of our staff members, which I love, like you and Chris, and I'm putting the names out there now, Jake and Rachel, and then some of our expert facilitators that are not part of the normal 24-hour ecosystem of Game On, but are out on the road, and they have their own interesting life experiences. And then, I can't promise, but, we'll see if we have some opportunities for some of our former clients and current clients to come in and share the space and chop it up with them and laugh with them.
I love it. So it was so fun getting to laugh with you. We laugh with each other every day. That's the beauty of working at Game On. But as we continue this story and conversation, just grateful for the foundation that you've laid for us to have the space and conversation around these topics. And so we want to encourage you to join us on these conversations as much as possible. We want to hear from you to know what are some topics or things that you would love to hear laughed about and laugh with us about. So make sure that you are subscribing and following and joining us as we continue laughing with each other.